Marcus Webb's hands trembled as the female CEO smirked her challenge drive this Formula One car and she would marry him. The executives thought they were watching a janitor fail, but Marcus knew when that engine roared to life, his 3-year secret would detonate and leave everyone speechless. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The challenge came on a Tuesday morning, delivered with the kind of casual cruelty that only the very wealthy can afford. Marcus Webb was wiping down the glass trophy cases in the executive lounge of Velocity Racing Technologies when he heard her voice, sharp and clear as crystal, cutting through silence. "Drive this car and I'll marry you." The words hung in the air, followed by a ripple of laughter from the cluster of executives gathered around the floor to ceiling windows overlooking the private test track. Marcus kept his head down, his cloth moving in steady circles across the glass. He had learned long ago that invisibility was his greatest asset in this building. The navy blue janitor's uniform with Velocity Racing Technologies embroidered on the chest pocket might as well have been a cloak. People looked through him, not at him, and that was exactly how he preferred it. But something about those words made him pause. Something about the tone, the cruel amusement threaded through it, made the muscles in his jaw tight. He risked a glance toward the windows. The woman stood in the center of the group, her silhouette backlit by the morning sun streaming across the track. Even from this distance, even in shadow, she commanded attention. Tall, elegant, wearing a white dress that probably cost more than his annual salary. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and oversized sunglasses hid her eyes. Victoria Sterling. Everyone at VRT knew who she was. At 32, she was the youngest CEO in the company's history, having inherited the position when her father, the legendary Richard Sterling, had suffered a stroke 8 months ago. The old man was still alive, still technically chairman of the board, but everyone knew Victoria ran the show now, and by all accounts, she ran it with an iron fist wrapped in designer leather. The laughter continued, and Marcus recognized the voices. There was James Whitmore, the chief technology officer, a man whose arrogance was matched only by his incompetence. Beside him stood Trevor Chang, head of marketing, whose slick smile never quite reached his eyes. And scattered around them were the usual hangers-on, the ambitious mid-level executives who laughed at every joke and nodded at every pronouncement, desperate to climb the corporate ladder. Marcus turned back to his work, but he couldn't help listening. The acoustics in this lounge were strained, designed to showcase the roar of engines from the track below, but somehow also amplifying voices in odd ways. He heard Trevor say something about finding the most unqualified person in the building, about making it entertaining, about social media gold. His stomach turned. They were planning something cruel. That much was obvious. But it wasn't his business. It never was. Marcus had learned that lesson the hard way, learned it in the wreckage of his old life and the ashes of everything he had once been. He pushed his cleaning cart toward the elevator, ready to move to the next floor, ready to disappear back into the comfortable anonymity of his routine, except his cart's wheel caught on something, jerking to a stop with a metallic screech that echoed through the lounge like a gunshot. Conversation by the windows stopped. Marcus felt their attention shift toward him like a spotlight. Hot and unwelcome. Don't look up, he told himself. Just fix the wheel and keep moving. But his hands, usually so steady, fumbled with the locked mechanism. Well, James Whitmore's voice was closer now, tinged with the particular mockery that men like him reserved for those they considered beneath them. Perfect timing. "Hey, you there, janitor, come here a second." Marcus's heart sank. Every instinct screamed at him to pretend he hadn't heard, to just keep working. But James was already walking toward him, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. The rest of the group followed, drawn by curiosity and the promise of entertainment at someone else's expense. Marcus straightened slowly, keeping his expression neutral. "Yes, sir." James's smile was wide and utterly insincere. "What's your name, buddy?" "Marcus Webb, sir." "Webb, great. Listen, Marcus, we were just having a little debate. You drive, right? Got a license?" "Yes, sir." Marcus's voice was flat, giving nothing away. He could see where this was going, could feel the trap being laid out in front of it. "Excellent." James turned to the group, his smile widening. "See? I told you we'd find someone perfect." He turned back to Marcus. "Here's the thing, Webb. Our illustrious CEO here." James gestured toward Victoria, who had removed her sunglasses and was now watching the interaction with an unreadable expression, just made a rather bold claim. She said she'd marry any man who could successfully drive one of our F1 cars around the track. Just one clean lap. No crashes, no spinouts. The trap snapped shut. Marcus understood immediately what they were doing. They were looking for a spectacle, for someone so obviously unqualified that the attempt would be humiliating. They wanted to watch someone fail, wanted to capture it for their amusement, wanted to remind Victoria that her challenge was ridiculous. "I appreciate the offer," Marcus said carefully, "but I need to get back to work." "Oh, come on," Trevor chimed in now, his voice oily with false encouragement. "Don't you want a shot at marrying a billionaire? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You could go from mopping floors to living in a mansion." Several of the executives laughed. Marcus felt the familiar burn of anger in his chest, but he kept it contained, locked down behind years of practice. "I'm not qualified, sir. I've never driven anything like that. That's kind of the point." James's voice had an edge now, annoyed that his entertainment wasn't cooperating. "Look, we're offering you a chance here. If you're too scared, just say so. It was psychological warfare, crude but effective. They were counting on pride or desperation or stupidity to make him agree. Marcus opened his mouth to refuse again, to extract himself from this situation with whatever dignity he could salvage. But before he could speak, Victoria Sterling stepped forward. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove herself to anyone, never having to earn respect because it had been handed to her along with her last name. She stopped a few feet from Marcus, and for the first time their eyes met directly. Hers were a striking shade of gray, cold and assessing. "What do you think, Mr. Webb?" Her voice was different from what he had expected. Not shrill or mocking, but measured, almost curious. "Do you think you could do it?" Marcus held her gaze. The smart answer was no. The safe answer was no. But something in her expression, something he couldn't quite identify, made him hesitate. It wasn't cruelty he saw there. It was something more complex, something that looked almost like a challenge directed not at him but at the men surrounding them. "I think," Marcus said slowly, choosing his words with care, "that anyone who hasn't trained extensively with Formula One cars would be a danger to themselves and the vehicle. It would be reckless and stupid." A flicker of something crossed Victoria's face. "It might have been approval, so you're declining?" "I am." James made a sound of disgust. "See, I told you this was a waste of time. These people don't have any ambition, any drive. They're content to stay exactly where they are." The condescension in his voice, the casual dismissal, the assumption that Marcus's life was small and meaningless because he wore a janitor's uniform, all of it crystallized into a moment of perfect, crystalline anger. Marcus felt something shift inside him, something he had kept locked away for 3 years, ever since the day his world had fallen apart. "Actually," Marcus said, his voice suddenly different, carrying an authority that made several of the executives blink in surprise, "I changed my mind. I'll do it." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "You will?" "On one condition." Marcus looked directly at James. "When I complete the lap clean, no crashes, no spinouts as you specified. All of you donate 1 month's salary to the Children's Trauma Recovery Fund. Every single one of you." The laughter died. James's smile turned into a sneer. "You're pretty confident for a janitor." "I'm confident enough to make the bet, are you?" Victoria's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. It was the first real expression Marcus had seen on her face, and it transformed her completely. She looked younger, less guarded, almost dangerous. "I accept your terms, Mr. Webb." She turned to James and Trevor. "Gentlemen," they couldn't back down now, not without looking weak in front of their CEO. James forced a laugh. "Fine. But when he crashes that car, you're paying for the repairs out of your own pocket, Webb. Deal." Marcus heard himself say the word, heard the confidence in his voice, and wondered what the hell he had just committed himself to. It's too late now. The trap he had thought they were laying for him had somehow reversed, and he had just walked willingly into a crucible of his own making. Victoria extended her hand. "Tomorrow morning, Mr. Webb, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Marcus shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin cool and dry. He felt a jolt of something electric pass between them, a recognition of some kind that he couldn't name. "Tomorrow," he agreed. As he pushed his cart toward the elevator, he heard the excited chatter behind him, the bets being placed, the speculation about how spectacular the failure. None of them knew. None of them had any idea. And as the elevator doors closed, Marcus allowed himself the smallest smile. Tomorrow morning, Victoria Sterling and every arrogant executive in that building were going to learn that the man they saw as invisible, the janitor they looked through like glass, had a secret that would leave the entire track silent. The apartment Marcus returned to that evening was a testament to deliberate simplicity. 3rd floor walk-up, 1 bedroom furnished with the bare essentials. The walls were blank, except for a single photograph on the mantel, a picture he could barely look at most days. It showed a younger version of himself, his arm around a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest room. Beside them stood a little boy, maybe 6 years old, grinning with 2 missing front teeth. That boy would be 9 now if things had been different, if Marcus had been faster, smarter, better. He set his keys in the bowl by the door and stood in the silence of his apartment, letting the weight of what he had just agreed to settle over him. What had he been thinking? The smart play would have been to keep his head down, to refuse politely, to remain invisible. Instead, he had let his anger get the better of it, had let James Whitmore's condescension crack through the armor he had spent 3 years building. Marcus walked to the small closet in his bedroom and reached up to the top shelf, his fingers finding the edge of a cardboard box he had not opened in months. He pulled it down carefully, dust motes dancing in the dim light from the single lamp. Inside the box was a life he had left behind, carefully folded and packed away like a burial shroud. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out the first item, a racing suit, fire-retardant Nomex in deep blue with silver striping. The name embroidered on the chest made his throat tight. Marcus Webb, Formula One driver. Below that, the logo of Sterling Racing, the team that had been Victoria's father's passion project, the team that had taken a chance on an unknown driver from a working-class background and turned him into something special. He had been 24 years old when Richard Sterling had signed him, a kid from nowhere with nothing but raw talent and a hunger to prove himself. For 4 seasons, Marcus had driven for Sterling Racing. He had not been the best driver on the grid, but he had been good, consistent, fast enough to score points, smart enough to bring the car home in one piece. He had been building towards something, toward that breakthrough season where everything would click into place. And then on a Tuesday afternoon in Belgium, everything had clicked apart instead. The crash had not been his fault. The investigation had made that clear. A mechanical failure in the rear suspension, a 1 in a million defect that had sent his car into the barrier at 180 miles per hour. He had walked away with a concussion and a fractured collarbone. His teammate driving an identical car with the same defect had not walked away at all. Marcus closed his eyes against the memory. David Chun had been 22 years old, brilliant and fearless, and gone in an instant. The guilt had been crushing, survivable only because Marcus had a reason to survive. He had gone home to his wife Sarah, and his son Ethan, had held them, and promised himself he would never race again. He would not risk leaving them the way David had left his family. For 2 years, he had kept that promise. He had taken a job as a driving instructor at a racing school, teaching wealthy amateurs how to handle high-performance cars on closed tracks. It had been safe, controlled, and soul-crushing, but he had been there for dinner every night, had been there to read bedtime stories, had been there until the accident. A drunk driver running a red light, a moment of catastrophic bad luck, and suddenly Marcus was the one left behind. Sarah and Ethan gone in the time it took for metal to crumple and glass to shatter. The drunk driver had survived with minor injuries. Marcus had survived with nothing but a guilt so vast it swallowed everything else. He had disappeared after that, quit his job, sold everything, and vanished into the anonymous machinery of low-wage labor. Janitor jobs were perfect because no one looked at janitors. No one asked questions. No one wanted to know your story. You showed up, did the work, and went home. It was a kind of purgatory, and Marcus had embraced it because he believed he deserved it. Now, holding his old racing suit, he wondered what cosmic joke had brought him back to Velocity Racing Technologies. He had taken the janitor position 6 months ago without realizing the connection to his old life. VRT was a sister company to Sterling Racing, both owned by Richard Sterling's vast motorsport empire. But the offices were separate, the operations distinct. He had assumed he could hide here, invisible among the corporate machinery. He had not expected to see Victoria Sterling, had not expected to be challenged to do the one thing he had sworn never to do again. Marcus laid the racing suit on his bed and sat beside it, his head in his hands. Tomorrow morning he would have to walk onto that track and slide into a car that would bring back every memory he had spent 3 years trying to bury. But he had made a promise, not to Victoria, not to those arrogant executives, but to himself. When James Whitmore had spoken about people like him, about their lack of ambition and drive, about their contentment to stay invisible, something had broken inside Marcus. He had been hiding for 3 years, and it was killing him just as surely as any crash. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. Be at the north entrance at 7:45 a.m. We'll need to get you fitted for safety gear. Don't eat a heavy breakfast. Vess. Victoria Sterling had his number, of course she did. She was the CEO. He probably had access to every employee file in the build. Marcus typed out a simple reply. I'll be there. Then he added, thank you for accepting the terms of the bet. 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. Those men think they're teaching me a lesson about making reckless statements. I have a feeling they're about to learn one instead. See you tomorrow, Mr. Webb. Marcus stared at the message, reading between the lines. She knew something, or suspected something. Victoria Sterling was not a fool, and she had not become CEO of a multi-billion-dollar racing empire by being careless. The question was, what did she know? He spent the evening going through muscle memory exercises, stretching and preparing his body for the physical demands of driving an F1 car. People who had never experienced it could not understand the brutal physics involved. The G-forces in high-speed corners were punishing, the braking forces violent enough to bruise. An F1 car was not transportation. It was a barely controlled missile, and every input from the driver had to be precise or the car would bite back. That night, Marcus barely slept. He lay in the dark and listened to the silence of his empty apartment, thinking about Sarah and Ethan, about David Chun, about all the ghosts that would be waiting for him on that track tomorrow. Around 3 in the morning, he finally drifted off, and he dreamed of speed and silence and the sound of engines screaming. His alarm went off at 6. Marcus showered and dressed in simple athletic clothes, loose-fitting pants and a moisture-wicking shirt. He ate a light breakfast of toast and black coffee, his stomach too tight with nerves to handle more. At 7:30, he was out the door, taking the bus across town to VRT headquarters. The facility was massive, a gleaming complex of glass and steel that housed everything from executive offices to state-of-the-art engineering labs. The private test track curved around the back of the property, a miniature version of a proper F1 circuit, with enough space to push a car to serious speeds. Marcus had cleaned the observation lounges that overlooked this track dozens of times, had watched from a distance as test drivers put prototype vehicles through their paces. He had never imagined he would be down there himself. The north entrance was usually locked, reserved for drivers and essential personnel. But today, as Marcus approached at exactly 7:45, the door swung open. A woman in VRT team gear stood there, holding a tablet. Marcus Webb, that's me. She looked him up and down, her expression skeptical but professional. I'm Andrea Reeves. head of track operations. Follow me. She led him through a maze of corridors that smelled of rubber and high-octane fuel, past walls covered with photos of legendary drivers and historic victories. They entered a preparation room where several racing suits hung on racks. Andrea gestured to them, "Find one that fits. Changing room is through there." Marcus selected a suit in his size and disappeared into the small changing room. The Nomex fabric felt familiar against his skin, a second skin he had worn for years. The fit was perfect. When he emerged, Andrea was waiting with a Hans device, the head and neck restraint that was mandatory in modern racing. She helped him adjust it, her movements efficient and practiced. "You ever driven anything fast before?" she asked, her tone conversational but probing. I've done some track days," Marcus said, which was not exactly a lie. Andrea's eyes narrowed slightly. "Track days, right." She handed him a helmet, top-of-the-line carbon fiber with a clear visor. "This is going to be interesting." They walked out onto the pit lane, and Marcus felt the morning sun on his face, smelled the distinctive scent of a racetrack, rubber, fuel, hot tarmac. It was a smell that took him back instantly, collapsing 3 years into nothing. His heart began to pound, not with fear, but with something he had not felt in a long time: anticipation. The car was waiting in the pit box, sleek and predatory. Current generation Formula One machine painted in VRT's signature black and silver livery. It was beautiful and terrifying, a work of engineering art worth millions of dollars. Marcus approached it slowly, his trained eyes taking in every detail. The front wing adjustments, the suspension geometry, the tire compound. He could read a race car the way some people read books. Behind him, he heard voices. The executives were arriving, gathering in the observation lounge above the pit lane. He spotted James Whitmore, Trevor Chang, and at least a dozen others. They had brought cameras, phones pointed toward the track. This was their show, their entertainment. And standing slightly apart from them, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses, was Victoria Sterling. She wore tailored black pants and a crisp white blouse, her hair pulled back in that same sleek ponytail. She looked every inch the CEO, composed and in control. Andrea helped Marcus climb into the narrow cockpit. The fit was tight, claustrophobic. He was strapped in with a 6-point harness, the belt cinched down until he could barely move. His hands found the steering wheel, and suddenly everything else fell away. The noise, the watching crowd, the weight of his past. There was only the car, the track, and the challenge ahead. Andrea leaned down close to his helmet. "One clean lap, that's all they want. Try not to kill yourself or total my car. I'll do my best," Marcus said. She walked away, and Marcus was alone. He went through the startup sequence from memory, his hands moving with practiced precision. The engine behind him roared to life, a violent, beautiful sound that made his bones vibrate. He let it warm up, watching the temperature gauges, listening to the engine note. Above him, the crowd had gone quiet. Quote, they were waiting for the show, for the spectacular failure. Marcus allowed himself one small smile behind his visor. Then he dropped the clutch, and the Formula One car exploded forward like a bullet from a gun, leaving the pit lane in a scream of engine noise that echoed off the walls and silenced every voice in the building. The acceleration was violent, intoxicating, brutal. Marcus felt the G-forces slam him back into the seat as the car surged forward, the engine screaming through its rev range. 200 horsepower per cylinder, 800 total, pushing a machine that weighed barely more than a motorcycle with its driver included. It was physics at its most aggressive, and Marcus's body remembered every nuance of it. His first instinct was to be gentle, to feel out the car's characteristics. But that instinct lasted exactly 3 seconds before muscle memory took over completely. His right foot found the perfect balance on the throttle. His left hand worked the steering wheel with micro adjustments that kept the car perfectly balanced through the first sweeping corner. The tires bit into the tarmac with a banshee wail that sent his heart soaring. He had forgotten what this felt like. No, that was not quite right. He had not forgotten. He had buried it, locked it away in the same place as all his other memories of the life before the accident. But now, with the wind screaming over his helmet and the engine howling behind him, it all came flooding back. The pure crystalline focus that racing demanded, where the entire world narrowed to the next apex, the next breaking point, the next perfect line through a corner. The first turn was a long right-hander that tightened progressively. Marcus carried more speed than he probably should have, feeling the rear of the car start to slide, and corrected with a tiny steering input and a breath of throttle. The car snapped back into line, obedient to his commands. Good. The setup was neutral, balanced. Someone had done excellent work with this machine. In the observation lounge, the executives had moved to the windows, their phones forgotten. James Whitmore's smug expression had frozen into something else. Something that looked like confusion. Trevor Chang was leaning forward, his hands pressed against the glass, and Victoria Sterling had removed her sunglasses, her gray eyes tracking the black and silver car as it carved through the second sector with a precision that should have been impossible for someone who claimed to have only done track days. Andrea Reeves stood in the pit lane, her arms crossed, a slow smile spreading across her face. She'd been in racing long enough to recognize talent when she saw it. The janitor was not fighting the car. He was dancing with it, extracting performance with a smoothness that spoke of thousands of laps, of years of experience. Her radio crackled. "Andrea, what the hell is going on? Who is this guy?" She keyed her mic, still watching the car. "I have no idea, but he sure as hell isn't a janitor." Marcus hit the braking zone for turn 7, a tight hairpin that required bleeding off massive speed. His left foot stabbed the brake pedal with enormous force, the carbon ceramic discs glowing as they converted kinetic energy into heat. The car pitched forward, weight transferring to the front tires, giving them maximum grip. He turned in at exactly the right moment, feeling the rear step out slightly, fed in the throttle progressively as he unwound the steering. Perfect. The car rocketed out of the hairpin, the rear tires clawing for grip, the traction control light flickering on his dashboard but barely intervening. He short-shifted into 4th gear, keeping the engine in its optimal power band, and aimed for the fastest section of the track. A long, sweeping left-hander taken flat out, followed immediately by a chicane that would test his precision. The flat-out corner generated over 4 Gs of lateral force. Marcus felt his neck strain against the Hans's device, his vision starting to gray at the edges. He kept his eyes focused on the exit, trusting his peripheral vision to guide the car through the apex. The steering wheel fought him, the tires screaming their protest, but he held the line. As he crested the slight rise that led into the chicane, the car went momentarily light, all 4 wheels barely kissing the ground. This was the moment where inexperienced drivers panicked, when the car became unpredictable, when the normal feedback disappeared. Marcus did not panic. He had felt this sensation hundreds of times. He kept his input smooth, let the car settle, and then attacked the chicane with a series of rapid left-right flicks that positioned the car perfectly for each apex. In the observation lounge, the silence was total. No one was laughing now. No one was making jokes. They were watching something they did not understand. Watching a man in a janitor's body drive like someone who had been born to do this. James Whitmore's face had gone pale. His trap had failed spectacularly, and worse, he was beginning to suspect that the trap had somehow been reversed on him. Victoria stood perfectly still, her knuckles white where she gripped the window frame. Her mind was racing, connecting dots she should have connected sooner. Marcus Webb. The name had been familiar when she had first heard it, a ghost of recognition that she had dismissed, but watching him drive now, watching the way he carried speed through corners, the way he positioned the car with absolute precision, she knew. She knew exactly who he was. Her father had signed Marcus Webb nearly a decade ago when Victoria was still in college. She had been home from university the day the young driver had come to the Sterling estate for dinner. Shy and overwhelmed by the opulence, she remembered her father raving about the kid's talent, about his work ethic. She remembered Marcus mentioning his wife and son, the way his whole face had lit up when he talked about them. And then she remembered the news. The crash that killed David Chun, Marcus's retirement from racing shortly after, and then years later, another news story, a tragic accident, a drunk driver, a family destroyed. After that, Marcus Webb had disappeared from public life completely, until now, until he had shown up in her building wearing a janitor's uniform, invisible in plain sight. The final sector of the track was a series of high-speed S's that required commitment and trust. Marcus threw the car into the first turn, feeling the suspension load up, the tires at the absolute limit of adhesion. He transitioned immediately into the opposite direction, the car flowing from left to right with a grace that made it look easy. It was not easy. It was brutally difficult, a constant battle between physics and skill. He could see the pit straight now, the finish line approaching. His final corner was a medium-speed right-hander that led onto the main straight. Marcus nailed the braking point, turned in with confidence, and squeezed the throttle as he tracked out to the exit curb. The engine screamed its approval, all 8 cylinders firing in perfect harmony, and the car launched down the straight like it had been fired from a catapult. Marcus crossed the line and immediately began cooling the car down, backing off the throttle, letting the engine breathe. His heart was pounding, but not from fear or adrenaline. It was from pure joy. He had forgotten what this felt like, this sense of rightness, of being exactly where he was supposed to be. For 3 years he had been lost, drifting through a life that was not his. For 1 minute and 47 seconds he had been found. He brought the car back into the pit lane and killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. Marcus sat in the cockpit for a moment, his hand still gripping the steering wheel, unwilling to let go of this moment. But reality was waiting for him, and he could not hide in this machine forever. Andrea was there as he climbed out, her expression a mixture of awe and accusation. "Track days," she said, her voice flat. "You said you'd done track days." Marcus pulled off his helmet, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. "I have, just not recently." She stared at him, then shook her head. "I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what professional driving looks like." That was a 1 minute 47 lap. "Our test drivers struggle to break 150 on this track. So you want to tell me who you really are?" Or should I just check the records myself? Before Marcus could answer, the door from the observation lounge burst open. The executives poured out onto the pit lane, their expressions ranging from shock to anger to something that looked like fear. James Whitmore led the charge, his face red, his finger pointing accusingly. "That's impossible," he sputtered. "There's no way. You've cheated somehow. The car must have been modified." "The car is stock," Andrea said coldly. "Same setup we use for all our testing. Nothing special about it except the driver." James turned on her. "Then you must have helped him, given him instructions over the radio or something?" "There's no radio in that car," Andrea replied, her patience clearly wearing thin. "And even if there was, you can't coach someone to drive like that. That takes years of training." Trevor Chang had his phone out, frantically typing. His face went pale as he read something on the screen. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh my God, what?" James snapped. "What is it?" Trevor turned his phone around, showing a Wikipedia page with a photograph. It was Marcus, younger, smiling, wearing a Sterling Racing Team suit. Marcus Webb, the text read, Formula One driver, 4 seasons with Sterling Racing. Retired following the death of teammate David Chun in a crash at Spa-Francorchamps. The silence that followed was absolute. Every executive on that pit lane realized simultaneously that they had not been watching a janitor try and fail to drive an F1 car. They had been watching a former professional driver remind them exactly who he used to be. The trap they had set had snapped shut on their own necks. Marcus stood calmly, his racing suit still zipped up, his expression neutral. He looked at each of them in turn, letting them feel the weight of their mistake. Then he looked past them up to the observation lounge where Victoria Sterling stood alone at the window. Their eyes met across the distance. Marcus saw something in her expression that he had not expected. It was not anger or accusation. It was respect and maybe something else, something that looked like understanding. She turned and disappeared from the window. A moment later, she emerged onto the pit lane. The crowd of executives parted for her automatically, their CEO moving through them like a queen among her subjects. She walked directly to Marcus and stopped 3 feet away. 1 minute, 47 seconds, she said. Her voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of emotion beneath it. "That's faster than any lap our current test drivers have achieved on this track. I got a little loose in turn 3, Marcus replied. "Could have been faster." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Could have been." She looked at the assembled executives, her gray eyes cold. "Gentlemen, I believe you all have some checks to write. 1 month's salary each, payable to the Children's Trauma Recovery Fund. That was the bet, as I recall." "Now wait just a minute," James started, but Victoria cut him off with a single gesture. "The bet was that Mr. Webb would complete 1 clean lap. No crashes, no spinouts." He did exactly that. "If any of you have a problem honoring your word, I suggest you come to my office and we can discuss your future with this company." The threat was clear and absolute. James's mouth snapped shut. The other executives looked at their shoes, their phones, anywhere but at Victoria or Marcus. They had been outplayed completely and everyone knew it. Victoria turned back to Marcus. "Mr. Webb, I'd like to speak with you in my office. Now, please." It was not a request. Marcus nodded, suddenly aware that while he had won the bet, the real game was just beginning. He followed Victoria Sterling back into the building, leaving behind the silent crowd of executives and the still warm race car that had just revealed all his secrets to the world. The elevator ride to the executive floor was suffocating in its silence. Victoria stood on one side, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Marcus stood on the other, still wearing the racing suit, very aware of how out of place he looked. The numbers climbed steadily upward, floor after floor, and neither of them spoke, but the air between them was charged with unasked questions and unspoken acknowledgments. When the doors finally opened, Victoria led him down a corridor Marcus had cleaned 100 times but never truly seen. The carpet was plush beneath his feet, a deep charcoal gray that probably cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. Original artwork lined the walls, abstract pieces that spoke of wealth and taste. They passed conference rooms with glass walls, empty now but designed to impress with their panoramic views of the city. Victoria's office was at the end of the hall, behind double doors made of dark wood and brushed steel. She pushed them open and gestured for Marcus to enter. He stepped inside and felt his breath catch despite himself. The space was enormous, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the test track on one side and the city skyline on the other. Her desk was a minimalist masterpiece of glass and steel, positioned to command both views simultaneously, but it was the wall behind her desk that drew his attention. It was covered with photographs, a visual history of Sterling Racing's legacy. Richard Sterling in his younger days shaking hands with legendary drivers, victory celebrations from various circuits around the world, and there, near the center, was a photograph Marcus remembered clearly. The Sterling Racing team from 7 years ago, all the mechanics and engineers and staff gathered around the 2 cars. Marcus stood near one of those cars, young and confident, his arm around David Chun's shoulder. Both of them were smiling, unaware that David had less than a year to live. Victoria closed the doors behind them and moved to her desk. She did not sit. Instead, she stood with her back to the windows, silhouetted against the bright morning light. Marcus felt exposed under her gaze, as if she could see through the racing suit to all the scars beneath. "You lied to me," she said. Her voice was not angry, just stating a fact. "No," Marcus replied carefully. "I told you I wasn't qualified to drive an F1 car. That was true. I'm not qualified anymore. I haven't raced in 3 years. A technicality." She moved around the desk, her movements controlled and deliberate. "Marcus Webb, 4 seasons with Sterling Racing. 12 podium finishes, 2 race wins. Considered one of the most promising young talents in the sport until you retired suddenly after the Spa crash. The crash that killed David Chun. Marcus flinched at the name. David's death was a wound that had never healed, made worse by the knowledge that it could just as easily have been Marcus's car that failed, that it should have been given the random nature of mechanical failures. Victoria continued, her voice softer now. Then you disappeared from the racing world entirely, worked at a driving school for a while, and then 3 years ago, another disappearance. Total silence until you showed up on my janitorial staff 6 months ago. She paused, studying his face. What happened 3 years ago, Marcus? The question was gentle, but it hit like a physical blow. Marcus turned away from her, unable to meet her eyes. That's not relevant to this situation. I think it is. Victoria moved closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. I think it's very relevant, because the man I saw driving that car was not broken. He was brilliant. But the man standing in front of me now looks like he's waiting for permission to run. Marcus's jaw tight. He had spent 3 years building walls around his grief, and this woman he barely knew was dismantling them with surgical precision. I lost my family, he said, the words coming out harsh and clipped. Car accident, drunk driver, my wife and son. After that, I couldn't be around racing anymore. Couldn't be around anything that reminded me of the life I used to have. The silence that followed was heavy with shared understanding. When Victoria spoke again, her voice had changed, the CEO mask slipping to reveal something raw beneath. I'm sorry. I know what it's like to lose someone you love. My mother died when I was 12. Cancer. My father threw himself into the business afterward, built Sterling Racing into what it is today because he couldn't stand being home where everything reminded him of her. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the expensive clothes and the powerful position to the person underneath. She was not just the ice-cold CEO the rumors made her out to be. She was someone who understood loss, who had built her own walls and learned to live behind them. Why did you make that challenge? Marcus asked. The marriage bet. That was never a serious offer. Victoria's smile was sad. No, it wasn't. It was a response to James Whitmore and his endless condescension. He had just finished a long explanation in a meeting about why certain decisions were emotional rather than logical, looking at me the entire time, implying that as a woman I was too emotional to run this company properly. So I made a flippant comment designed to highlight how absurd his attitude was, and they turned it into a cruel joke. They always do. Victoria walked to the windows, her arms crossed, looking out at the track where Marcus had just driven. They think I'm cold and heartless because I don't tolerate their nonsense. They think I don't understand the technical side of racing because I'm not one of the boys. She turned back to him. And then you came along and threw their entire worldview into chaos. Do you know what you've done? I made them honor a bet. No, you've reminded everyone in this building that you can't judge a person's worth by their job title or their clothes. That someone they literally looked through like glass is one of the most talented drivers to ever work for a Sterling race. She moved closer again, her intensity palpable. And you did it with such precision, such perfect skill that there's no way they can dismiss it. That lap time will be posted on the internal network by lunch. Every engineer, every technician, every person in this company will know what happened this morning. Marcus felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. That's exactly what I didn't want. I took this job because I wanted to be invisible. Too late for that. Victoria's expression softened slightly, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe being invisible was killing you slowly, and you needed someone to drag you back into the light. I'm not ready to be dragged anywhere. Marcus's voice was firmer now, defensive. I completed your challenge. I won the bet. That's all I agreed to do. Victoria studied him for a long moment, and Marcus had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing things he did not want to reveal. Then she moved to her desk and pressed a button on her phone. Sandra, cancel my appointments for the rest of the morning. She released the button and looked at Marcus. Sit. It was a command, delivered with the authority of someone who expected to be obeyed. Marcus found himself sinking into one of the leather chairs facing her desk before he consciously decided to comply. Victoria sat opposite him, the desk no longer between them. I have a proposition for you, she said. My father, Richard Sterling, had a stroke 8 months ago. He's alive, but the recovery has been slow. He can't run Sterling Racing anymore, which means the team needs leadership. We've had an interim team principal, but he's not working. The team needs someone who understands racing from a driver's perspective, someone who can work with the engineers and get the best out of our current drivers. Marcus's eyes widened as he realized where this was going. No, absolutely not. Hear me out. Victoria leaned forward, her gray eyes intent. You don't have to drive. You don't have to race. But your knowledge, your experience, that's invaluable. You could help rebuild Sterling Racing into what it should be. I'm a janitor. Marcus's voice was flat. I mopped floors and empty trash cans. That's what I do now. That's what you've been hiding behind. Victoria's words were sharp, but not unkind. Marcus, I watched you drive this morning. You weren't just going through the motions. You were alive in that car in a way I suspect you haven't been alive. You can't tell me that didn't mean something. It meant I can still drive a car in a circle. It doesn't mean I want to spend every day surrounded by racing. What if I told you my father has been asking for you? Victoria's voice was quieter now, playing what she clearly hoped was a winning card. When he found out you were working here, that you had applied for a janitorial position, he wanted to reach out. I stopped him. I thought you deserved your privacy. But he never forgot what you could have become, Marcus. He feels responsible for what happened to David Chun. responsible for your career ending the way it did. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Richard Sterling had been more than a team owner. He had been a mentor, a father figure to a kid from nowhere. Knowing that Richard had been aware of his presence in the building all this time, that he had respected Marcus's need for invisibility, was almost too much to process. "I can't," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Victoria stood and walked to the wall of photographs. She pointed to the one of Marcus and David Chun. "My father keeps a copy of this photo in his study. He looks at it every day. I think he sees it as a reminder of potential unrealized, of lives cut short or altered by tragedy." She turned back to Marcus. "You don't have to decide right now, but at least come meet with him, talk to him, see what Sterling Racing has become and what it could be again." Marcus stood, his body tense with the warring impulses of flight and fight. This was supposed to be simple. He was supposed to make his point, collect on the bet for charity, and go back to his quiet, invisible life. Instead, he was being offered a key to the prison he had built around himself, and the thought of using it terrified him. "I need time to think," he said finally. "Take the rest of the week." Victoria moved to the door and opened it. "But Marcus, consider this. You made those executives donate a month's salary to the Children's Trauma Recovery Fund. Do you know what that charity does?" Marcus shook his head. "It provides support for children who have lost parents in accidents. Children like your son would have been if he had survived and you hadn't." Victoria's words were gentle but deliberate. "You're already trying to heal the wounds you carry, even if you won't admit it. Maybe it's time to stop hiding from the healing." Marcus walked out of her office without another word, his mind reeling. He made it to the elevator, back down to the ground floor and out to the parking lot where the buses ran. He stood at the bus stop in his street clothes, having changed back in the locker room, and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, though he suspected he knew who it was. "My father's estate, Saturday at 2 p.m. The address followed. "You don't have to commit to anything. Just listen. That's all I ask. V's." Marcus stared at the message for a long time. The bus came and went, and then another. He stood there as the morning stretched toward noon, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, as his life balanced on a knife's edge between the past and the future. Finally, against every instinct telling him to run, to hide, to remain invisible, he typed out a single word: "Okay." He hit send and immediately wanted to take it back, but it was too late. The message was delivered, the commitment made. On Saturday, he would walk back into the world of Sterling Racing, back into the presence of Richard Sterling, back toward everything he had run from. And Marcus Webb had absolutely no idea if he was strong enough to survive it. The next 3 days at Velocity Racing Technologies were surreal. Marcus arrived for his evening shift on Tuesday, half expecting to be called into human resources and terminated. Instead, he found something far more unsettling. People were looking at him, not through him, not past him, but directly at him. The invisibility he had cultivated so carefully had been shattered completely. In the break room, conversations stopped when he entered. Technicians and engineers who had never acknowledged his existence now nodded in greeting. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed perhaps by how they had previously dismissed him. Others stared with open curiosity, clearly wanting to ask questions, but unsure if they had the right. Marcus kept his head down, made his coffee, and retreated to his work as quickly as possible. But the whispers followed him through the hallways. "Did you see the video?" Someone had filmed his lap from the observation lounge, and despite Victoria's attempts to keep it internal, the footage had leaked. By Wednesday morning, it was circulating on racing forums and social media. "Former F1 driver working as janitor destroys track record," the headlines read. The comments ranged from impressed to sympathetic to outright invasive speculation about why he had disappeared from racing. Marcus deleted his social media apps and tried to focus on his work, but Wednesday evening brought a new complication. He was cleaning the engineering labs on the 3rd floor when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to find Andrea Reeves, the head of track operations, leaning against the doorframe. "Got a minute?" she asked. Marcus set down his cleaning supplies. "I'm on the clock. This won't take long." Andrea walked into the lab and hopped up to sit on one of the workbenches, her legs swinging casually. "That was some impressive driving on Tuesday. The kind of impressive that doesn't just happen." "Thank you," Marcus said neutrally, waiting for the real reason for her visit. "I pulled your file. Not the janitorial one, the real one." She crossed her arms, studying him with the directness of someone who spent her life evaluating performance and cutting through nonsense. Marcus Webb, Sterling Racing, 2016 to 2020. 12 podiums, 2 wins. Would have had more if not for that disaster of a 2019 car. "You were good, Marcus. Really good." "Past tense," Marcus said. "I was good. I'm not that person anymore." Andrea tilted her head. "I've been in motorsports since I was 16. Started as a mechanic, worked my way up. I've seen a lot of drivers come and go. Some of them lose that edge that made them special. Age, fear, injury, whatever. But what I saw on Tuesday wasn't someone who lost it. That was someone who still has it but is choosing not to." "What's your point?" "My point is that talent like yours is rare. Wasting it pushing a mop around this building seems like a tragedy." She hopped off the bench and moved closer, her expression serious. "Victoria offered you something, didn't she? A position with Sterling Racing." Marcus's silence was answer enough. "Take it," Andrea said bluntly. "I don't know what happened to make you walk away from racing, and I'm not going to pry. But hiding from your gift doesn't honor whatever or whoever you lost. It just means the world has one less person doing what they were born to do. She left before Marcus could formulate a response, her footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. He stood alone in the lab, surrounded by the tools and equipment used to make race cars faster, and wondered how many more people were going to tell him who he should be before Saturday arrived. Thursday brought an unexpected visitor to his apartment. Marcus had just returned from the grocery store, his arms loaded with bags, when he found someone waiting in the hallway outside his door. The man was in his 60s, distinguished looking, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore an expensive suit that marked him as someone important, someone who did not belong in this modest build. "Mr. Webb," the man said, standing as Marcus approached. "My name is Henry Blackwood. I'm the team principal at Sterling Racing, or rather, the interim team principal. I was hoping we could talk." Marcus shifted his grocery bags, buying himself a moment to think. "How did you know where I live?" "Miss Sterling provided your address." Henry's expression was apologetic. "I know this is an intrusion, but I felt it was important that we speak before Saturday." Marcus unlocked his door and gestured inside, less out of hospitality and more from a desire to get this conversation away from potential neighbors. His apartment looked exactly like what it was, a temporary space occupied by someone who had no interest in making it a home. Henry took it in with a quick, assessing glance, but said nothing. "I'll be direct," Henry said once they were both seated. Marcus on his threadbare couch and Henry in the single armchair. "Sterling Racing is struggling. We're 7th in the Constructors' Championship. Our drivers are frustrated, and morale is low. Richard Sterling built something extraordinary, but without his leadership, we're floundering. And you think I can help with that?" Marcus's tone was skeptical. "I know you can." Henry leaned forward, his intensity matching Victoria's. "I've watched the video of your lap. I've read every race report from your seasons with the team. You understood the technical side better than most drivers. You could feel what the car needed, communicate it to the engineers. That's a rare gift. I was a driver, not a team principal. Richard Sterling wasn't a driver either. He was a businessman who loved racing enough to learn everything about it. You're a driver who loves racing enough to understand the business. That makes you potentially perfect for this role." Marcus shook his head. "You're talking about leading an entire Formula One team. Managing engineers, strategists, drivers, sponsors. I have no experience with any of that." "You have something more important than experience." Henry's voice was firm. "You have credibility. Every person in that paddock will respect you because you've been in the car. You've felt what they feel. And the current drivers, they'll listen to you because you've stood where they stand." He paused, letting that sink in. "Richard Sterling believes in you, Marcus. So does his daughter. Question is, do you believe in yourself?" Question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marcus thought about the 3 years he had spent in self-imposed exile, thought about the loneliness of his invisible life, thought about the moment in the cockpit when everything had felt right again for the first time in forever. "I believe I'm terrified," Marcus said honestly. "Terrified of failing, terrified of letting people down, terrified of caring about something again only to lose it." Henry's expression softened. "That's not a weakness. That's wisdom. The people who worry about failing are the ones who try hardest to succeed." He stood, preparing to leave. "Richard is looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Whatever you decide, know that you have a place in this family if you want it. Sterling Racing takes care of its own." After Henry left, Marcus sat in the gathering darkness of his apartment and thought about family. His wife and son had been his family, his entire world. When they died, he had believed that chapter of his life was closed forever. But maybe family was not just about blood. Maybe it was about the people who saw you, really saw you, and chose to stand beside you anyway. Friday was Marcus's day off from VRT, and he spent it doing something he had not done in 3 years. He drove out to the cemetery where Sarah and Ethan were buried. The graves were side by side, simple headstones with their names and dates. He sat on the grass between them, the autumn sun warm on his back, and talked to them the way he used to when the grief was still fresh. "I met someone," he said quietly, addressing Sarah. "Not like that. Not romantically. But someone who sees through the walls I built. Victoria Sterling, Richard's daughter. She's offering me a way back to racing, and I don't know what to do." The wind rustled through the nearby trees, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Marcus imagined Sarah's voice, imagined what she would say if she were here. She had always been his compass, his true north when he lost direction. "You'd tell me I've been hiding long enough, wouldn't you?" He smiled despite the ache in his chest. "You'd tell me that talent is a responsibility, not a burden. That Ethan wouldn't want his dad to spend his life being invisible." He looked at his son's headstone, at the dates that marked such a tragically short life. 9 years old when the drunk driver had taken him. 9 years of laughter and questions and pure, unbridled joy. Ethan had loved watching his father race, had worn a tiny Sterling Racing jacket with pride, had drawn pictures of race cars in crayon that Sarah had hung on the refrigerator like they were museum pieces. "I'm scared, buddy," Marcus whispered. "Scared that if I care about something again, if I let myself love what I do, it'll get taken away like you were, like Mom was. I don't know if I'm strong enough to survive that twice." But even as he said the words, Marcus knew what the answer was. He had survived. He had kept breathing, kept moving, kept existing even when existence felt like punishment. That was strength, even if it did not feel like it. And maybe it was time to stop just surviving and start actually living again. He stayed at the cemetery until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. When he finally stood to leave, he placed a hand on each headstone. "I'm gonna try," he told them. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm gonna try. I think you'd both want that. The drive back to his apartment felt different somehow, as if a weight he had been carrying had lightened just slightly. When he arrived home, there was a package waiting outside his door. No return address, but he recognized the logo on the box, Sterling Racing. Inside was a team jacket identical to the ones he had worn during his driving days, but new, with his name still embroidered on the chest. Beneath it was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Thought you might need this for tomorrow. Whatever you decide, you'll always be family. Richard Sterling. Marcus held the jacket for a long time, his fingers tracing the embroidered letters of his name. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. Tomorrow he would walk into Richard Sterling's estate and face the man who had given him his first real chance, who had believed in a kid from nowhere when no one else would. Tomorrow he would have to decide if he was brave enough to step back into the light, or if he would retreat to the safety of shadows. He hung the jacket carefully in his closet, next to the single suit he owned. Then he made himself dinner, showered, and went to bed early. Sleep was elusive, his mind churning through scenarios and possibilities. But eventually exhaustion won out and Marcus drifted off into dreams of racetracks and checkered flags and a future that terrified and excited him in equal measure. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. Marcus dressed carefully, choosing his one good pair of jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He pulled on the Sterling Racing jacket, and despite everything, despite all his fears and doubts, it felt right, felt like coming home. He checked the address Victoria had sent him and programmed it into his phone's GPS. The Sterling estate was an hour outside the city, in the countryside where old money built compounds away from the noise and chaos of urban life. The drive gave him time to think, to prepare himself for what was coming, but no amount of preparation could fully ready him for the moment when he turned onto the long driveway that led to the estate and saw the sprawling mansion rising against the horizon like something out of a different era, a different world. This was where the Sterling family had built their empire, and Marcus was about to walk through its doors and decide if he had the courage to be part of it again. The Sterling estate was not just a house. It was a statement of legacy, of generations of wealth built on passion and precision. The main building was Georgian in style, all symmetrical proportions and elegant stonework, surrounded by manicured grounds that stretched as far as Marcus could see. As he drove up the circular driveway, he noticed the garage complex off to the right, a structure that looked large enough to house a dozen vehicles. Knowing Richard Sterling, it probably contained a collection of historic race cars worth more than most people's homes. Marcus parked his modest sedan next to a sleek Mercedes and a vintage Porsche, feeling acutely aware of the class divide he was crossing. He sat in his car for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel, giving himself a final chance to run, but he had come this far. Turning back now would be cowardice, and whatever else Marcus Webb might be, he was not a coward. He climbed out and approached the massive front door. Before he could knock, it swung open to reveal Victoria Sterling. She had traded her business attire for casual elegance, wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that softened her usual severe appearance. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves around her shoulders, and for a moment Marcus forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful in a way he had not allowed himself to notice before. "Marcus," she said, a genuine smile touching her lips. "I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "That's honest." She stepped aside, gesturing him in. "My father is in his study. He's been looking forward to this all week." The interior of the house matched its exterior grandeur. High ceilings with ornate molding, hardwood floors that gleamed with care, walls covered with artwork that Marcus suspected was original and priceless. But what struck him most was how lived in it all felt. This was not a museum. It was a home, filled with the accumulated memories of a family that had occupied this space for decades. Victoria led him through a series of rooms, past a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, past a living room with comfortable furniture arranged around a fireplace large enough to stand in. She stopped at a heavy wooden door and knocked softly before opening it. "Dad, Marcus is here." The study was smaller than Marcus expected, more intimate. Bookshelves lined 3 walls filled with volumes about racing history, engineering, business strategy. A large desk sat near the window, papers and notebooks scattered across its surface in organized chaos. And in a leather armchair near the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the day, sat Richard Sterling. Marcus's breath caught. The man he remembered had been a force of nature, tall and commanding, with a voice that could fill a paddock and eyes that missed nothing. The man in the chair was a shadow of that memory. Richard had lost weight, his face gaunt, his body diminished by the stroke. But when he looked up and saw Marcus, his eyes were the same, sharp, intelligent, and filled with unmistakable warmth. "Marcus," Richard said, his voice slower than Marcus remembered, slightly slurred on one side but full of emotion. "Come here, boy. Let me look at you." Marcus crossed the room and knelt beside the chair, bringing himself to Richard's eye level. The older man reached out with his good hand and gripped Marcus's shoulder with surprising strength. Tears welled in Richard's eyes, and Marcus felt his own throat tighten in response. "I thought I'd never see you again," Richard said. "When I heard you were in the building working as a janitor," his voice cracked, "I wanted to find you, to talk to you, but Victoria said you needed space, said you were healing in your own way." "I wasn't healing," Marcus said quietly. "I was hiding. Sometimes those are the same thing." Richard's grip tightened. "I failed you, Marcus. I failed you and David and everyone on that team. That car should never have been on the track with that suspension defect. The blood is on my hand. No, Marcus said firmly. The investigation cleared everyone. It was a manufacturing defect that no one could have predicted. That doesn't ease the guilt. Richard's eyes held decades of regret. David Chun died driving my car. You lost your career. And then you lost your family. He closed his eyes, a single tear tracking down his weathered cheek. I heard about Sarah and Ethan. I wanted to reach out to attend the funeral, but I was told you wanted privacy. I respected that, but it killed me not to be there for you. Marcus had not expected this. He had prepared himself for many things, but not for Richard Sterling's grief, so raw and honest that it mirrored his own. You gave me everything, Marcus said. You took a chance on a nobody and made him somebody. You have nothing to apologize for. I have everything to apologize for. Richard opened his eyes again. But that's not why you're here. You're here because my daughter thinks you can save Sterling Racing, and I think she might be right. Victoria, who had been standing quietly near the door, moved closer. She pulled up another chair and sat, so the three of them formed a small circle. Dad has been telling me stories about your time with the team. I knew you were good, but I didn't realize how good. He was better than good, Richard said, a hint of his old enthusiasm creeping into his voice. He had instincts that can't be taught, could feel what the car needed before the data told us. The engineers loved him because he could explain exactly what was happening in language they could use. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. That was a long time ago. I'm not that person anymore. Aren't you? Victoria's question was gentle but pointed. I saw you in that car on Tuesday, Marcus. You weren't just driving. You were communicating with the machine, reading it, responding to it. That's not something you lose. That's part of who you are. Richard nodded slowly. The team needs you, not as a driver, as a leader. Someone who understands racing from the inside, who can bridge the gap between the technical side and the human side. He paused, catching his breath. The stroke took my body, but it didn't take my mind. I can still see the problems. Still know what needs to be fixed, but I can't be there day to day anymore. I need someone I trust, someone who loves this sport as much as I do. That's a lot of responsibility, Marcus said. A lot of people depending on me. What if I fail? Then you fail. Victoria's bluntness was oddly comforting, but at least you failed trying, failed doing something that matters. Right now, you're failing by default, hiding behind a mop and pretending you're content. Which failure would haunt you more? Was a question Marcus could not easily answer. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the estate grounds. In the distance, he could see what looked like a small private track, probably where Richard tested personal vehicles. The sight of it sent a familiar ache through his chest, a longing he had tried to suppress for 3 years. Can I ask you something? Marcus said, still looking out the window. Both of you, why does this matter so much? Sterling Racing is just one team among many. If it fails, the world keeps turning. No, Richard said, his voice strong despite his weakened body. No, it doesn't. Not for the people who pour their lives into it. Not for the mechanics who work 18-hour days because they believe in what we're building. Not for the young drivers who see us as their chance to prove themselves. His voice softened. And not for me. Sterling Racing is my legacy, Marcus. It's what I leave behind when I'm gone. I don't want it to die before I do. The raw honesty of that statement hit Marcus like a physical force. He turned back to face them. And you really think I'm the person to carry that legacy forward? I know you are, Richard said, because you understand that racing is not just about being fast. It's about family, about teamwork, about pushing yourself and everyone around you to be better. You learned that the hard way through loss and pain. That makes you exactly who we need. Victoria stood and moved to stand beside her father's chair, her hand on his shoulder. We're not asking you to forget what you lost. We're asking you to honor it by living again, by being who you were meant to be. Marcus looked at them. This father and daughter united in their belief in it, and felt something shift deep inside his chest. It was not the walls coming down, it was worse. It was hope, fragile and terrifying, beginning to take root. He thought about Sarah, about what she would say if she were here. He thought about Ethan, about the pride in his son's eyes when he watched his father race. And he thought about the last 3 years, the slow suffocation of living a life that was not his. I'll need help, Marcus said, the words coming out before he fully realized he was committing. I don't know how to run a team. I don't know the politics, the sponsor relationships, the media obligations. I'll make mistakes. We all make mistakes, Victoria said, but you'll make them trying to do the right thing, and we'll be there to help you. Henry Blackwood will stay on as your deputy, handling the administrative side while you focus on the racing operation. I'll handle the corporate relationships and budget. You just need to do what you do best. Lead. What I do best is drive. Marcus said. No, Richard's voice was firm. What you do best is understand people. I watched you with the young mechanics, the way you'd explain things, encourage them. I watched you with David, how you mentored him, even though you were competitors. Driving was just your vehicle, if you'll forgive the pun. Leadership is your gift. Marcus moved back to the chair and sat down heavily, his mind reeling. This was really happening. He was really considering stepping back into a world he had fled from, taking on a responsibility that terrified him. But underneath the fear was something else. Excitement, purpose, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he could do this. I'll need time to transition, he said, thinking practically. I can't just walk away from my current job without notice. 2 weeks, Victoria said immediately. Give your notice on Monday. We'll announce your appointment as team principal at the beginning of next month. That gives us time to prepare the press release. brief the team, get everything ready. Marcus nodded slowly, then looked at Richard. What if I let you down? What if I can't live up to what you're expecting? Then you let me down, Richard said simply. But I don't believe you will. I've been wrong about many things in my life, Marcus, but I've never been wrong about people. You have something special. You always have. Just forgot it for a while. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm gonna text Henry and tell him to start the paperwork. We'll keep this quiet until the official announcement, but the senior staff needs to be prepared. She looked at Marcus, her gray eyes bright with something that looked like triumph. Welcome back to Sterling Racing, Marcus Webb. We've missed you. The words should have felt overwhelming, should have sent him running for the door. Instead, they felt like absolution, like permission to stop punishing himself for surviving when others did not. Marcus stood and extended his hand to Richard. Quote, the older man gripped it firmly with his good hand, and Marcus felt the transfer of trust. The passing of a torch from one generation to the next. I won't let you down, Marcus said. I know you won't. Richard pulled him closer into an awkward one-armed embrace. Welcome home, son. Victoria walked Marcus back through the house toward the front door. At the threshold, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. Thank you for trusting us. I know this wasn't easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, Marcus replied, realizing as he said it that he believed it. She smiled, and it transformed her face completely. Maybe when you're settled in, when the chaos dies down, we could have dinner? Not a business dinner. Just dinner. Get to know each other outside of racing. Marcus felt his heart skip. Was she asking him out, or was this just friendly? He searched her face for clues and found only openness, a vulnerability that matched his own. I'd like that, he said honestly. Good. She squeezed his arm once and then let go. Drive safe, Marcus. I'll see you soon. He walked back to his car feeling lighter than he had in years. As he drove down the long driveway and back toward the city, Marcus caught himself smiling, really smiling for the first time since the accident. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges he could not yet imagine. But for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Webb was not running from his past. He was driving toward his future. And that made all the difference. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that Marcus had not felt since his first day as a professional driver. He walked into Velocity Racing Technologies in his janitor's uniform one final time, carrying with him a handwritten letter of resignation. The building felt different now, or perhaps he was different. He was no longer invisible. People nodded as he passed, some with respect, others with curiosity, a few with what looked like resentment. Marcus delivered his letter directly to Human Resources. The woman behind the desk, Janet Reeves, read it quickly and looked up with surprise. 2 weeks' notice? Mr. Webb, if this is about what happened last week, about the challenge, I want you to know that we value all our employees. It's not about that, Marcus assured her. I've been offered another position. It's time for me to move on. Can I ask where? He hesitated, then remembered that the news would be public soon enough anyway. Sterling Racing. I'm going to be their new team principal. Janet's eyes went wide. The Sterling Racing? Formula One? That's the one. Word spread through the building like wildfire. By lunch, everyone knew that the janitor who had humiliated the executive team was leaving to run one of the most prestigious racing teams in the world. The reactions were mixed. Some people sought Marcus out to congratulate him, to tell him they had always suspected he was meant for greater things. Others avoided him entirely, perhaps embarrassed by how they had treated him when he was beneath their notice. James Whitmore was conspicuously absent from his office all week. Marcus heard through the grapevine that he had taken sudden vacation time, probably trying to avoid the fallout from his failed attempt at humiliation. Trevor Chang, however, appeared on Wednesday afternoon while Marcus was cleaning the executive lounge one last time. So, Trevor said, his tone carefully neutral, moving up in the world. Just moving, Marcus replied, not looking up from his work. Trevor was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised Marcus. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the blind date setup. It was cruel and unnecessary. Marcus straightened, meeting Trevor's eyes. He saw genuine remorse there, not the calculated manipulation he had expected. Why did you go along with it? Trevor shrugged uncomfortably. Because James suggested it and I'm a coward who goes along with things to fit in. Seeing you in that car, seeing what we almost destroyed with our stupid joke, it made me realize how small I've been, how small we all were. It takes courage to admit that, Marcus said. Not really. Trevor gave a sad smile. Real courage is what you did, taking our mockery and turning it into something that forces us all to look at ourselves. I donated 3 months' salary to that charity fund. Not one. It felt like the least I could do. After Trevor left, Marcus finished his shift in thoughtful silence. People were complicated, he realized, capable of cruelty and kindness sometimes in the same breath. Trevor's apology did not erase what had been done, but it acknowledged it, and that mattered. His final day at VRT was Friday. Andrea Reeves tracked him down in the afternoon, carrying a small wrapped package. The team wanted to give you something, she said, handing it over. Open it. Inside was a framed photograph. It was a still image captured from the video of his lap, the black and silver F1 car mid-corner, perfectly balanced, with Marcus visible through the cockpit opening. Below the image was a plaque that read, Marcus Webb, never judge a book by its cover. The photo was signed by dozens of people, engineers and technicians he had worked alongside without ever really knowing. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Thank you. This means more than you know. You showed us something important, Andrea said. That excellence doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it's quiet, humble, pushing a cleaning cart through our hallways. She extended her hand. Good luck at Sterling Racing. If you ever need a track operations manager, you know where to find me. I'll remember that, Marcus promised. That evening, Marcus packed up his small apartment. He would not need this place anymore. Victoria had arranged for temporary housing near the Sterling Racing headquarters while he looked for something permanent. As he folded his few possessions into boxes, he came across the photograph of Sarah and Ethan that had sat on his mantle. He held it for a long time, his thumb tracing the outline of their faces. I'm doing it, he told them softly. I'm stepping back into the world. I hope you're proud of me. I hope I can make you proud. The silence that answered was not empty. It was peaceful, accepting. Marcus carefully wrapped the photograph and placed it in his carry bag. Wherever he went, they would go with him. Monday morning, Marcus Webb walked into Sterling Racing headquarters as its new team principal. The facility was located in a sprawling complex an hour outside London, in the heart of Britain's motorsport valley where most Formula One teams were based. The building was modern, all glass and steel, with the Sterling Racing logo prominent on the main entrance. Henry Blackwood was waiting for him in the lobby. "Welcome to your first day," he said with a warm smile. "Ready to meet the team?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Marcus admitted. Henry led him through security and into the main facility. The scale of the operation was staggering. Hundreds of people worked here, from aerodynamicists in the wind tunnel to mechanics preparing cars for the next race. Every department was a hive of focused activity, and Marcus felt the familiar thrill of being part of something larger than himself. The senior staff meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the main conference. Marcus entered to find a dozen people already seated around a massive table. They looked up as he entered, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. These were the people who ran Sterling Racing day to day, the heads of aerodynamics, mechanical engineering, race strategy, driver development. They had been told their new boss was coming, but most of them had no idea who Marcus Webb really was. Henry took his place at the table and gestured for Marcus to stand at the head. "Everyone, this is Marcus Webb, our new team principal. Marcus, meet your leadership team." Marcus looked around the table, reading the room. He saw doubt, curiosity, and in a few faces, something that looked like hope. He had prepared a speech, something professional and inspiring about his vision for the team. But standing there, seeing the weight of their expectations, he abandoned his prepared remarks and spoke from the heart instead. "My name is Marcus Webb. 10 years ago, I was a driver for this team. I had 12 podiums and 2 wins before I retired following the death of my teammate David Chun. After that, I lost my way completely. I spent the last 3 years working as a janitor, hiding from racing and from myself. Last week, Victoria Sterling challenged me to drive again, and I remembered who I used to be." He paused, letting his vulnerability hang in the air. "I'm not going to stand here and pretend I have all the answers. I don't. But I know race and I know this team, and I know that together we can be better than we are right now." The room was silent. Then a man at the far end of the table stood up. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and oil-stained hands that marked him as someone who worked directly with the cars. "I remember you," the man said. His accent was Italian, thick and musical. "I was a junior mechanic when you drove. You were always kind to us. Always listened. You made us feel like we mattered." "You did matter," Marcus said. "You still do. This team succeeds because of people like you, not people like me." The Italian mechanic smiled and extended his hand across the table. "My name is Carlo Benedetti. I am now chief mechanic. Welcome home, Marcus." One by one, the others around the table stood and introduced themselves. The skepticism did not entirely disappear, but it softened, replaced by a cautious willingness to give him a chance. They spent the next 3 hours going through the team's current status. The picture was not pretty. Sterling Racing was struggling with an underperforming car, driver tension, and morale problems that stemmed from months of uncertain leadership. "Our lead driver, Sebastian Kohler, is frustrated," explained the chief engineer, a sharp woman named Dr. Sarah Chun. "No relation to David. He feels the car is unpredictable and that we're not listening to his feedback. Our second driver, young Tommy Pearson, is overwhelmed and making mistakes under pressure." "When can I meet them?" Marcus asked. "They're both in the simulator right now," Henry said. "He'd go down after this meeting." The simulator facility was impressive. A state-of-the-art setup that could replicate any track in the world with stunning accuracy. Marcus entered the control room and looked through the glass at the 2 simulators running side by side. In one, he could see Sebastian Kohler, a German driver in his late 20s with a reputation for being difficult. In the other was Tommy Pearson, a British kid barely 21 years old. Marcus watched their driving styles through the telemetry displayed on the screen. Sebastian was aggressive, pushing the car beyond its limits and fighting it constantly. Tommy was too cautious, leaving time on the table because he was afraid of making mistakes. Both approaches were wrong, but for different reasons. "Can I speak to them?" Marcus asked. The technician nodded and handed him a headset. He keyed the microphone. "Sebastian, Tommy, this is Marcus Webb. I'm your new team principal. When you finish this run, please come to the briefing room. We need to talk." There was a pause, then Sebastian's voice came through, thick with skepticism. "The Marcus Webb, the driver?" "That's right." Another pause. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." The briefing room was small and functional, with a whiteboard on one wall and a table surrounded by chairs. Marcus waited, organizing his thoughts. He knew driver management would be one of his biggest challenges. These were proud, competitive men with egos that needed careful handling. Sebastian arrived first, still wearing his racing suit, his face flushed from the simulator work. He looked Marcus up and down, assessing. So it's true. They hired an ex-driver to run the team. They hired someone who understands what you're going through, Marcus corrected. Someone who's been in the car and felt the frustration of fighting a machine that won't do what you want. Sebastian's expression softened slightly. Have you seen the data from this year? This car is a disaster. The rear end steps out randomly, the front wing balance is wrong. I've been saying it for months, but no one listens. I've seen the data. Marcus gestured to a chair. Sit. We need to talk about your driving style. My driving style? Sebastian's defensiveness returned immediately. There's nothing wrong with my driving. The car is the problem. The car has problems, Marcus agreed, but you're not helping. You're overdriving, trying to force it to do things it can't do right now. That's making the data messy and making it harder for the engineers to understand what really needs fixing. Before Sebastian could respond, Tommy Pearson entered, younger and more nervous. He looked between them uncertainly. Sorry, am I interrupting? No, come in. Marcus gestured to another chair. I was just telling Sebastian that we need to change our approach. Both of you are trying to solve the car's problems individually. Sebastian by overdriving, Tommy by being too conservative. Instead, we need to work together systematically. How? Tommy asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. We build a baseline, Marcus explained, moving to the whiteboard. Tomorrow we run test sessions with both of you driving identically, same setup, same tire compound, same fuel load. We gather clean data. Then we make one change at a time and see what works. No guessing, no fighting the car. Scientific method. That will take time, Sebastian objected. We have a race in 2 weeks, and we'll go to that race with a better understanding of our car than we have right now, Marcus said firmly. I'm not promising miracle, but I am promising that you'll both be heard, that your feedback will matter, and that we'll make decisions based on data rather than politics. Sebastian studied him for a long moment. You really think you can turn this around? I think we can turn this around together, Marcus corrected. I'm not a miracle worker. I'm just someone who refuses to give up. The question is, are you willing to trust me? The German driver was quiet, then slowly nodded. I'll give you a chance. But if this doesn't work, then I'll be the first to admit it, Marcus promised. Fair enough, fair enough. The first 2 weeks as team principal were brutal. Marcus worked 16-hour days learning the intricacies of running a Formula One team while simultaneously trying to fix the fundamental problems that had plagued Sterling racing all season. He sat in engineering meetings where complex aerodynamic theories were discussed in rapid-fire technical jargon. He reviewed budgets and sponsor contracts with Victoria, learning the business side of motorsport. He spent hours in the simulator with both drivers, building the systematic approach he had promised. The breakthrough came on a Thursday afternoon in the wind tunnel. Dr. Sarah Chun had been running tests on the front wing design, trying to understand why the car's balance was so unpredictable. Marcus stood beside her, watching the smoke visualization as it flowed over the scale model of their car. Something about the pattern bothered him, a turbulence forming at the junction between the wing and the nose cone. Can you increase the angle by 0.5 degrees? Marcus asked. Sarah adjusted the model and ran the test again. The smoke pattern changed subtly, the turbulence reducing but not disappearing. Marcus leaned closer, his driver's instinct fighting with the limited technical knowledge he had. When I was driving, that car would feel nervous on turn-in, like the front wanted to push wide, but mid-corner it would suddenly grip. That's inconsistent airflow, right? Sarah's eyes widened. You're right. The wing is stalling at certain speeds and your angles. She pulled up computational models on her screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. If we modify the end plate geometry here, we can stabilize the flow. It won't be a massive gain, but it should make the car more predictable is what we need right now, Marcus said. Make the change. We'll test it tomorrow. The next morning, Sebastian Kohler took the modified car out for a shakedown run at their private test track. Marcus stood in the pit lane with Henry Blackwood watching the telemetry on a tablet. The first few laps were exploratory, Sebastian feeling out the changes. Then his lap times began to drop, consistently, predictably. When he came in after 20 laps, the German driver pulled off his helmet with something Marcus had not seen before. A genuine smile. The front end, Sebastian said, climbing out of the car. It's more stable. I can trust it now. It's not a rocket ship yet, but I can actually drive it without fighting every corner. This is just the beginning, Marcus told him. It's a good beginning. Word spread through the facility. The new team principal had identified a problem that had plagued them all season and found a solution in less than 2 weeks. The skepticism that had greeted Marcus began to shift into cautious optimism. People started coming to him with ideas, with concerns, with suggestions. The wall between leadership and workers began to dissolve, but not everything was going smoothly. On Friday evening, as Marcus was preparing to leave for the night, Henry knocked on his office door. We have a problem, he said, his expression grim. One of our major sponsors is threatening to pull out. They're concerned about the team's performance, and they're not sure about having an inexperienced team principal at the helm. Marcus felt his stomach sink. How major are we talking? Major enough that losing them would seriously impact our budget for next season. They want a meeting. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's Saturday, Marcus said. They know. They want to see if you're committed enough to come in on your day off. It was a test, obviously. Marcus nodded. Set it up. I'll be here. That evening, Marcus returned to his temporary apartment exhausted and stressed. He had barely sat down when his phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. he answered, suddenly aware that he had not spoken to her since his first day at the facility. Marcus, her voice was warm. How's your first fortnight as team principal? Intense, he admitted. I'm learning more than I thought possible and discovering how much I don't know. That's called growth. She paused. I heard about the sponsor situation. I wanted you to know that I'll be at that meeting tomorrow. You won't face them alone. You don't have to do that, Marcus said, even as relief flooded through him. I know I don't have to, but I want to. We're a team, remember? She paused again. Also, I was wondering if you'd like to have that dinner we talked about tomorrow night after the sponsor meeting. You'll probably need to decompress. Marcus smiled despite his stress. That sounds perfect, assuming I still have a job after tomorrow. You'll have a job, Victoria said with confidence. I believe in you. Now get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The sponsor meeting took place in the executive conference room at 9 a.m. Marcus arrived at 8:30 to find Victoria already there, dressed in a sharp business suit that reminded him she was not just Richard Sterling's daughter, but a formidable CEO in her own right. She smiled when she saw him and gestured to the seat beside her at the head of the table. We'll present a united front, she said quietly. They want to intimidate you. Don't let them. The sponsors arrived promptly at 9. There were 3 representatives from Apex Technologies, a major tech company whose logo was prominently displayed on the Sterling racing cars. The lead representative, a man named Gordon Matthews, was in his 50s with the kind of polished arrogance that came from decades of corporate power plays. Mr. Webb, Gordon said as he sat down, not bothering with pleasantries. Let's be direct. Apex Technologies has invested significant capital in Sterling Racing based on the reputation and leadership of Richard Sterling. Now we're being told that a former driver with no management experience is running the team. You can understand our concern. I can, Marcus said calmly. But let me offer some context. Richard Sterling himself selected me for this role, not because I have an MBA or decades of corporate experience, but because I understand racing at a fundamental level. I've been in the car, felt what the drivers feel, and I can translate that into technical improvements. That's all very poetic, Gordon said dismissively, but what we care about are results. Your team is currently 7th in the Constructors' Championship. That's not acceptable for the amount of money we're investing. You're right, Marcus agreed, surprising them. 7th place is not acceptable, but if you look at the trajectory, you'll see we've scored more points in the last 2 races than in the previous 5 combined. The car's getting better, the drivers are more confident, and the team morale is higher than it's been all season. Victoria pulled up a presentation on the screen behind them. As you can see, gentlemen, the data supports what Marcus is saying. We've made measurable progress in a very short time, and I should add that Apex Technologies is not just investing in results. You're investing in a story, in a team with heart and determination. That story is more valuable than you might think. Gordon was unmoved. Stories don't win races. Technology and money do. Actually, Marcus said, leaning forward, stories are exactly what win championships. Do you know why teams like Ferrari and Mercedes have such loyal fan bases? It's not just because they win. It's because people connect with their narratives, with the human drama behind the racing. Sterling Racing has an incredible story right now. A legendary team fighting its way back from adversity under new leadership. That's compelling. That's what sponsors should want to be associated with. The 3 representatives exchanged glances. One of them, a younger woman named Lisa Chun, spoke up for the first time. I've seen the video of you driving that F1 car at Velocity Racing Technologies. It went viral. Over 10 million views across various platforms. The engagement numbers are extraordinary. People are talking about Sterling Racing in ways they haven't in years. That's correct, Victoria said. Marcus's return to racing has generated more positive press for this team in 2 weeks than we had all of last year. Your logo is appearing in articles, social media posts, and news segments around the world. The visibility alone is worth the investment. Gordon was clearly not happy about being outmaneuvered, but Lisa's point was valid and he knew it. Fine, he said tersely. We'll maintain our sponsorship for the remainder of this season, but we'll be watching closely. If the results don't continue to improve, we'll reevaluate for next year. That's all we can ask, Marcus said, extending his hand. We won't let you down. After the sponsors left, Victoria turned to Marcus with a broad smile. That was impressive. You held your ground without being defensive. You made them see the value beyond just race results. I had a good teacher, Marcus said, meaning her. She laughed. I didn't teach you that. That was all you. She checked her watch. Now, I believe we have dinner planned. There's a restaurant about 20 minutes from here. Best Italian food in the region. How does 7 o'clock sound? Perfect. That evening, Marcus found himself sitting across from Victoria Sterling in an intimate restaurant that felt a world away from corporate meetings and racing teams. The lighting was soft. The atmosphere relaxed. For the first time, he was seeing her not as the CEO or Richard Sterling's daughter, but simply as Victoria. She had changed into a simple black dress, her hair down, her usual armor of professional distance completely absent. So, she said, swirling wine in her glass, tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with racing. Marcus thought for a moment. I used to paint watercolors. Nothing professional, just something I did to relax. I haven't picked up a brush in 3 years. Why did you stop? Same reason I stopped everything else. It reminded me of who I used to be, and I was trying very hard not to be that person anymore. Victoria nodded, understanding in her eyes. I stopped playing piano after my mother died. She was the one who taught me, who would sit beside me on the bench and guide my hands. After she was gone, the music felt hollow. Do you ever think about starting again? Marcus asked. Every day, she admitted, but there's always something more urgent, more important. Work never stops demanding attention. Maybe we both need to remember that we're more than our work, Marcus said. That the things we loved before tragedy are still there, waiting for us. Is that what this is? Victoria's question was soft, vulnerable, a reminder that we're allowed to be more than our grief. Marcus reached across the table and gently took her hand. I think maybe it is. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily from heavy topics to light ones. Victoria told him about growing up in the shadow of her father's legacy, about the pressure to be perfect, never show weakness. Marcus shared memories of Sarah and Ethan, stories he had not told anyone in years, and found that speaking their names did not hurt as much as he had feared. When they finally left the restaurant, it was late and the streets were quiet. Victoria's car was parked near his and they stood between the vehicles, neither quite ready to say goodbye. The evening had shifted something between them, creating a connection that went beyond professional respect or shared loss. Thank you for tonight, Marcus said. I didn't realize how much I needed this. Needed to just be human for a few hours. We should do it again, Victoria said. Soon, maybe next time without a sponsor crisis hanging over our heads. Marcus smiled. I'd like that very much. She stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. The gesture was simple, almost chaste, but it sent electricity through his entire body. Good night, Marcus. Drive safely. Good night, Victoria. He watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the night, and realized that something profound had changed. He had spent 3 years convinced that his capacity for connection, for feeling anything beyond grief, had died with his family. But standing in that parking lot, his cheeks still warm from Victoria's kiss, Marcus understood that healing was possible. Not forgetting, not replacing what was lost, but learning to live again, to open his heart to new possibility. His phone buzzed with a text. From Victoria. Thank you for being brave enough to step back into the light. I know it wasn't easy. Sleep well. Marcus typed his reply carefully. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing I was worth saving. Tonight was perfect. As he drove home through the quiet streets, Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. Not just hope, but genuine happiness. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges both professional and personal. But for the first time since losing Sarah and Ethan, Marcus Webb believed he might actually deserve a second chance at joy. And that changed everything. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of progress and setbacks, small victories and hard lessons. Sterling Racing finished 5th in the next race, their best result of the season. Sebastian Kohler drove brilliantly, extracting every ounce of performance from the improved car. And Tommy Pearson brought his machine home in 9th place, scoring his first championship points. The paddock began to take notice. Marcus Webb was not just a figurehead or a nostalgic hire. He was actually making a difference. But success brought new pressures. The media wanted interviews, wanting to dissect the miracle turnaround story. Marcus hated the attention, hated having his personal tragedy picked apart by journalists looking for compelling narratives. Victoria ran interference when she could, handling the press with the same fierce protectiveness she brought to everything else. Their relationship, still undefined and tentative, continued to deepen through late-night phone calls and stolen dinners between races. It was after the race in Singapore, where Sterling Racing secured another 5th-place finish, that Marcus's world tilted again. He was in his hotel room reviewing race data on his laptop when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made him answer. Is this Marcus Webb? The voice was female, American, uncertain. Yes, who is this? My name's Jennifer Lawson. I'm an attorney in Ohio. I've been trying to find you for 6 months. There was a pause, heavy with significance. I represent the estate of Thomas Brennan. The name meant nothing to Marcus at first. Then it hit him like a physical blow. Thomas Brennan, the drunk driver who had killed Sarah and Ethan, the man who had destroyed Marcus's entire world in a moment of selfish stupidity. Why are you calling me? Marcus's voice was cold, defensive. Miss Brennan passed away 4 months ago. Liver failure related to his alcoholism. Before he died, he wrote you a letter. I've been trying to deliver it according to his wishes. I don't want anything from that man, Marcus said, his hand trembling. He took everything from me. I understand, Jennifer said gently. But this letter, Mr. Webb, I think you should read it. May I send it to you? Marcus wanted to refuse, wanted to hang up and forget this conversation ever happened. But something in Jennifer's voice, a compassion that felt genuine, made him hesitate. Send it, he said finally. Then he gave her his email address and ended the call. The letter arrived in his inbox 5 minutes later. Marcus stared at the PDF attachment for a long time, his finger hovering over the download button. Finally, he opened it. The letter was handwritten, the script shaky and uneven, obviously written by someone in poor health. Dear Mamar, Webb, it began. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that not a single day has passed since the accident that I haven't thought about what I took from you. Your wife, Sarah, your son, Ethan. I remember their faces from the news cover. I remember learning their names, learning about the lives I destroyed. Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes, but he kept reading. I was a coward. I ran from responsibility, accepted a plea deal, served minimal time. I told myself that I couldn't undo what happened, so why destroy my life too? But the truth is, My life was already destroyed. The alcohol had destroyed it long before that night. I just didn't want to admit it. I've spent the last 3 years sober, Miss Webb. Not because it will bring them back. Not because it makes what I did any less monstrous. But because I needed to become the kind of man who could face what I had done. In my sobriety, I've worked with addiction recovery programs trying to prevent others from making the same mistakes. It's not redemption. Nothing can redeem what I did, but it's something. I'm dying now. My liver is failing and the doctors say I have weeks, maybe days. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of dying without telling you that your family's deaths matter. That they changed me. That Sarah and Ethan did not die for nothing because their loss made me finally confront my demons. I know this letter is selfish. I know it's me seeking absolution that I have no right to ask for, but I wanted you to know that I see them. I remember them, and I am so sorry. The letter was signed simply Thomas Brennan. Marcus sat in his hotel room and wept. He wept for Sarah and Ethan for the life they should have had. He wept for the man who had taken them, who had destroyed himself along with them, and he wept for himself for the 3 years he had spent locked in grief, unable to move forward. The letter did not absolve Thomas Brennan. Nothing could, but it acknowledged the full weight of what had been lost. And somehow that acknowledgement mattered. His phone rang again. Victoria. He almost did not answer, did not want her to hear him like this, but he picked up anyway. Marcus? Her voice was concerned. I just had a feeling. Are you okay? No, he said honestly, but I will be. Where are you? I'm coming to you. You're in London. I'm in Singapore. I don't care. Give me your hotel and room number. Victoria, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Her voice was fierce, loving. You don't get to be alone right now. Tell me where you are, he told her. 12 hours later, there was a knock on it. Marcus opened it to find Victoria standing there, still in travel clothes, her eyes exhausted but determined. She did not ask what happened. She just stepped inside, wrapped her arms around him, and held him while he told her everything. About the letter, about Thomas Brennan, about the complicated tangle of grief and anger and unexpected compassion he felt. You're allowed to feel all of it, she whispered into his hair. The anger, the sadness, even the compassion. None of it diminishes what you lost or how much you love them. They stayed in that hotel room for the rest of the day, ordering room service and talking about loss and healing and the impossible complexity of forgiveness. Victoria told him about the years after her mother's death. About the anger she had felt toward her father for throwing himself into work instead of grief, how she had eventually understood that everyone processed pain differently and judgment helped no one. As evening fell over Singapore, they sat on the balcony watching the city lights come alive. Marcus held Victoria's hand and felt the last piece of armor around his heart finally crack open. He was not betraying Sarah's memory by moving forward. He was honoring it by learning to live fully again. I think I'm falling in love with you, he said quietly, surprising himself with the admission. Victoria turned to look at him, her gray eyes luminous in the fading light. I know I'm falling in love with you. It terrifies me. Me too, Marcus admitted. But maybe that's how it's supposed to feel. Scary and wonderful at the same time. She leaned in and kissed him. Not the chaste kiss from the parking lot, but something deeper. A promise of possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. The rest of the season became a blur of racing and relationship, professional growth and personal healing. Sterling Racing continued to climb the standings, finishing the year in 5th place overall, their best result in 3 years. Sebastian Kohler secured 2 more podiums and Tommy Pearson matured into a consistently point-scoring driver. The team that had been demoralized and directionless found its purpose again. Marcus and Victoria made their relationship public in the most low-key way possible, simply showing up together at team events until people got the message. The media had a field day with the romance angle, but neither of them cared. They had found something real in the midst of chaos, and no amount of public scrutiny could diminish that. In December, as the season ended and the team began preparations for next year, Marcus drove out to the cemetery where Sarah and Ethan were buried. It was the first time he had been back since accepting the position with Sterling Racing. He brought flowers and sat on the cold ground between their graves, the winter sun pale but warm on his back. I'm doing it, he told him. I'm living again. There's someone new in my life, Victoria. She's amazing and complicated, and she makes me want to be better. I hope that's okay. I hope you understand that loving her doesn't mean I've forgotten you. It just means I'm learning that the heart is big enough for both grief and joy. The wind rustled through the bare trees, carrying the scent of winter. Marcus felt a peace settle over him that he had not felt in years. Not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. The understanding that loss and love were not opposites, but companions, forever intertwined. When he stood to leave, he noticed someone standing near the cemetery entrance. Victoria. She had followed him, giving him privacy but wanting to be there when he needed her. Marcus walked over to her and she took his hand without a word. Together they walked back to the car. There's something I need to ask you, Victoria said as they drove back toward the city. My father wants to officially retire as chairman at the end of the year. He's asked me to take over, which means I'll be running both Velocity Racing Technologies and Sterling Racing's parent company. It's a huge responsibility. That's incredible, Marcus said. You'll be amazing at it, but it means I'll have even less time. Less time for us. She looked at him, vulnerable in a way he rarely saw. I need to know if you're willing to build a life with someone whose work will always demand so much. Marcus pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. Victoria, I spent 3 years being invisible because I was afraid to care about anything. You dragged me back into the light. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Your work doesn't scare me. What scares me is the thought of not having you in my life. Her eyes filled with tears. So we're really doing this? Building something together? We're really doing this, Marcus confirmed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He'd been carrying it for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. This wasn't how I planned to do this on the side of a road in December. Feels right. He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Victoria Sterling, will you marry me? She laughed and cried at the same time, nodding before she could find words. Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. They sat in that car on the side of the road and held each other. Two people who had found love in the unlikeliest of places, built on tragedy and transformation. The road ahead would not be easy. Their lives were complicated, their responsibilities vast, but they would face it together, and that made all the difference in the world. 1 year later, the Sterling racing paddock at the Monaco Grand Prix was alive with controlled chaos. Mechanics swarmed over the cars, making final adjustments before qualifying. Engineers studied telemetry data on dozens of screens. The air smelled of racing fuel and possibility. Marcus Webb stood in the team principal's position on the pit wall, headset on, watching his drivers prepare for what could be the most important qualifying session of the season. Sterling Racing had shocked the motorsport world. After finishing 5th in the Constructors' Championship the previous year, they had started the new season with a car that was genuinely competitive. Sebastian Kohler had already secured 2 victories, and Tommy Pearson had his first podium. They were currently 3rd in the championship, within striking distance of the top 2 teams. The transformation was complete. Sterling Racing was back, but today was special for reasons beyond the racing. In the VIP suite above the garage, Richard Sterling sat in his wheelchair, stronger now after months of rehabilitation. Beside him sat Victoria, wearing both her CEO credentials and her engagement ring, the diamond catching the Mediterranean sunlight. They were watching Marcus's work, pride evident on both their faces. Sebastian's radio crackled to life. Marcus, the car feels good. Really good. I think we have a shot at pole position today. Focus on your outlap, Marcus replied calmly. Get the tires in the window and let the car do the work. Don't overdrive it. Understood, boss. Qualifying session was brutal and beautiful. A dance of precision and speed on the most challenging circuit in Formula One. Sebastian pushed the car to its absolute limit, threading through Monaco's unforgiving barriers with millimeter precision. When he crossed the line to complete his final flying lap, the time that flashed on the screens made the entire Sterling Racing garage erupt in cheers. Provisional pole position. Sebastian Kohler had just set the fastest lap in qualifying, putting Sterling Racing at the front of the grid for the first time in 5. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what they had been building toward, this moment of vindication and triumph. After the session, as the champagne sprayed and cameras flashed, Marcus made his way up to the VIP suite. Richard was waiting for him, tears streaming down his weathered face. Marcus knelt beside the wheelchair and Richard gripped his hand with surprising strength. Sarah and Ethan would be so proud of you, Richard whispered. Your wife, your son, they would have loved seeing you like this. Leading, inspiring, building something beautiful from the ashes. Marcus felt his own tears come. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That's what family does, Richard said. And you are family, Marcus. Always have been. Victoria appeared beside them, her hand gentle on Marcus's shoulder. The press wants interviews. You ready? Marcus stood and kissed her softly. Let's do this together. The press conference was everything Marcus had dreaded and more. Questions about his journey from janitor to team principal, about his relationship with Victoria, about whether their romance was a distraction or an inspiration, but Marcus handled it with grace, giving honest answers without revealing more than he was comfortable sharing. Yes, he had been lost. Yes, Victoria had helped him find his way back. Yes, he believed in second chances. One journalist asked the question that cut closest to the bone. Webb, there are some who say your success this year is tainted by nepotism, that you only got this position because you're engaged to the boss's daughter. How do you respond to that? Marcus smiled, the question not wounding him as it might have a year ago. I respond by pointing to the results. Sterling Racing was 7th when I took over. We're now 3rd and fighting for podiums every race. People want to call that nepotism, that's their choice. I call it hard work, dedication, and a team that believed in themselves. Victoria squeezed his hand under the table, a silent communication of pride and support. That evening, after the chaos of race day preparation had settled, Marcus and Victoria walked along the Monaco harbor. The yachts gleamed in the fading light, and the Principality sparkled like a jewel box. They had reserved a quiet restaurant for dinner, but both of them needed a moment of peace first. Do you ever think about that day? Victoria asked. The challenge in the observation lounge at VRT. Marcus laughed. Every single day. I think about how angry I was, how James Whitmore's condescension finally broke through all my defense, how terrified I was getting back in that car. I think about watching you drive, Victoria said, realizing that the janitor I'd been walking past for months was someone extraordinary, feeling something shift inside me that I didn't understand yet. When did you know, Marcus asked, that you were falling in love with me? Victoria was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. That night in Singapore, when you called and I could hear the pain in your voice. I was on a plane 6 hours later without even thinking about it. That's when I knew. That's when I understood that you had become essential to me. For me, it was the cemetery, Marcus said. said. When I turned around and saw you standing there giving me space but refusing to let me be alone. That's when I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with someone that thoughtful, that caring. They stopped walking and Victoria turned to face him, the harbor lights reflecting in her eyes. We're getting married in 3 months, she said. Are you ready for that? Ready to legally bind yourself to a workaholic CEO who will probably always put too much pressure on herself? Only if you're ready to bind yourself to a team principal who will spend half the year traveling and the other half obsessing over aerodynamic data. Deal, she said, and they sealed it with a kiss that made passing tourists smile. Race day at Monaco was everything Marcus had dreamed it could be. Sebastian Kohler converted his pole position into a commanding victory, driving a flawless race that showcased both his talent and the car's performance. Tommy Pearson finished fourth, just missing a double podium but still scoring crucial points. Sebastian crossed the finish line, the Sterling Racing Garage exploded in celebration. This was not just a win, it was a statement. They were back among the elite teams of Formula One. On the podium, as Sebastian sprayed champagne and the crowd roared, Marcus stood with his team below, his arm around Victoria. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the depths of grief to this moment of pure joy. He thought about Sarah and Ethan, about how their love had shaped him into someone capable of healing and growing. He thought about Richard Sterling's faith in him, Victoria's unwavering support, and his own hard-won courage to step back into the light. Later, in the quiet of their hotel room, Marcus and Victoria sat on the balcony overlooking the Mediterranean. Tomorrow they would fly back to England, back to the relentless demands of running a Formula One team and a corporate empire. But tonight they had this moment of perfect peace. Do you remember what you said to me, Marcus asked, that day in your office when you offered me the position? Which part? You said that hiding from my gift didn't honor what I'd lost, that it just meant the world had one less person doing what they were born to do. You were right. I'm always right, Victoria teased. You should know that by now. Marcus laughed. Noted for future reference. He pulled her close, breathing in her perfume, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. Life had taken everything from him once, had broken him so completely that he had not believed healing was possible. But here he was, whole again in ways he had never expected, not because he had forgotten his pain, but because he had learned to carry it alongside his joy. His phone buzzed with a message. It was from James Whitmore, of all people. The executive who had orchestrated the cruel blind date setup had sent a single sentence. You proved me wrong about everything. Congratulations on today's victory. Marcus showed the message to Victoria. She raised an eyebrow. Are you going to respond? Marcus thought for a moment, then typed out a reply. Thank you. It takes strength to admit when you're wrong. I appreciate that. He hit send and then turned off his phone completely. The past no longer controlled him, but he could acknowledge it with grace. That felt like growth. As the night deepened and the stars came out over Monaco, Marcus and Victoria talked about their future, the wedding in 3 months, the possibility of starting a family, the next race in 2 weeks, the endless balancing act of love and ambition. But through it all ran a thread of certainty, a knowledge that whatever challenges came, they would face them together. The cruel joke that had started this journey, the challenge to drive an F1 car for the CEO's hand in marriage, had become something neither of them could have predicted. Not a joke at all, but a catalyst for transformation. Marcus had driven that car and won far more than he had bargained for. He had won back his life, his purpose, and his heart. And Victoria, who had made that flippant challenge in a moment of frustration, had gained something equally precious. She had found a partner who understood pressure and passion, who could match her strength with his own, who had been broken and rebuilt into something even more resilient. As they went inside and prepared for bed, Marcus caught sight of their reflection in the mirror. Two people who had every reason to be bitter and closed off, standing together with smiles on their faces and hope in their eyes. That image was worth more than any trophy or championship. It was proof that healing was possible, that second chances were real, and that love could emerge from the unlikeliest of circumstances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new races to run, new obstacles to overcome. But tonight, Marcus Webb, former janitor turned team principal, stood with Victoria Sterling, the woman who had seen him when he was invisible, and felt genuinely, completely, impossibly happy. The track had been silent when he drove that first lap, shocked by the revelation of who he really was. But now, as he moved forward into his future, Marcus was done being silent. He was done hiding. He was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he was meant to do, loving exactly who he was meant to love. And that made him the richest man in the world. Championship trophies and Monaco victories notwithstanding, the journey from invisible janitor to visible leader had been painful and beautiful, terrifying and transforming, but every step had been worth it. Because at the end of that road stood Victoria, stood Sterling Racing, stood a life worth living fully and fearlessly. Marcus turned off the lights and climbed into bed beside the woman he loved, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring.